just get one score and that's how you always show up. Like I said before, in different contexts, you actually are different, and around different. So context matters more than content. But those tests just give you a single score and you assume that that's who you are, but that score also becomes your identity. You use that as a label to define yourself, which can stop you from many things. It stops you from being mindful. So Ellen Langer at Harvard, she studied mindfulness for the last 40 years, and mindfulness is kind of key to being aware of yourself and aware of your surroundings. Mm-hmm. Mindfulness is really important for mental functioning. But what happens when you assume a label is that you become mindless to all the times that the label is not true. What happens is your label becomes tunnel vision. We call it selective attention in psychology, but you basically see the world through a lens. You don't see the world objectively. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. And so you see the world through your lens. You know, I'll give you an easier example. Like, you know, when you buy a car, you start to see that car on the road everywhere.
Yes.
You have a lens, right? But because you notice things that are relevant, your conscious awareness can only kind of, you know, handle it only so much. And so you pay attention to the things that are relevant. Right. But you don't pay attention to the things that are not. And so there's like 500 cars on the road that you don't notice, but you notice the ones that are. And so that's kind of what labeling does, is that you assume that the label is always true because that's what you see. What you don't see are the hundreds of times when you're actually acting contrary to the label. Mm-hmm. So what Ellen Langer has found is, like, if someone defines themselves as depressed, they'll think that they're always depressed. Yeah. But in reality, they're actually not. Like, if they were mindful of themselves, they would actually realize that on many occasions they actually feel quite good. And so you become mindless to all the times when the label is not true. So you kind of have confirmation bias. Mm-hmm. But also you seek to confirm the label because you're speaking so definitively about your current self. I am X. Rather than saying that this is who I am right now, but this is where I want to go. Having the courage to admit that this is the person I want to be and that I'm not quite there yet and that there's aspects of myself that I want to improve. Mm-hmm. Like, research shows over 90% of people, and I actually think realistically it's actually 100, but the research says over 90% of people want to make various changes in their lives. We all want to become something. And so the key is starting to admit it, defining it, and it's a choice you make. It's something you discover. It's a choice you make about the person you want to be. Mm-hmm. And then you tell people about it and you make that your new narrative, that this is the person I'm going for. I'm not there yet, but I'm going for this. This is what I'm committed to. This is where I'm going. And then obviously creating an environment to support your future self, investing money into your future goals, just like you did on that microphone. At some point you started investing in the idea of you being a podcaster. You know, right. You started probably studying how to do it well. Like, you started to train this new identity of you doing this thing. And so that's kind of just how you do it.
No, there's a lot of good points there. Definitely. I think we're going to have to listen to this podcast like 2 times or 3 times just to take it all in, because there's so much information. It's making me think, and I'm sitting here like hanging on to every word. It's incredible. I'm curious what you would recommend to these businesses that use these tests, because I know, like, for me, I'm thinking, just like there's no parent handbook, there's no book out there to tell you how to raise your kids, because there are so many, they grow up to be different. They are not, they have their own personality, or it's just whatever.
They do.
There is no book. So and with this test, you know, what else would you recommend these corporations do? Because you're right. Each person, they're going to take each scenario, they're going to accept each scenario differently. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of the test is to provide a snapshot, and I think it actually can provide some information. The problem is that the information should be taken with an extreme grain of salt. There's a lot of research about, like, for example, you know, I'll just give one example, but then I'll provide a recommendation. So there's research that shows that basically with these types of personality tests, this is one of the reasons why they're not that reliable. But in one study, 2 groups of people were broken up. One group, because usually in a scientific study, you break people into 2 groups and you kind of have different dimensions to kind of test something. But first group, they took a personality test, and about a week later, they took the same test. And they had the same test administrator for both tests. So the same person who gave them the test gave it again to them a week later, and their scores were pretty consistent. Obviously not perfectly consistent, the next group, they took the same test. About a week later, they took the exact same test. Only difference was there was a different person administering the test. And by just changing that one thing, the tests were completely non-correlated.
Wow.
And so you just have to realize that the test score that you think your employee has may have been answered for a billion different reasons. Could have been the conditions in which they took the test, could have been because of how they were feeling that day, could have been because they were motivated to get the job. And so the scores, first off, you got to take them with a grain of salt. Second off, you got to realize that that's just maybe them in one situation, but they're not going to consistently and reliably show up that way. In different circumstances, they may be different. I think that there are much better and more scientifically validated scales or tests. You can study, for example, a person's like self-efficacy, like their learning ability. You could study their grit, their like adaptability. There's actually a lot of research now that shows that adaptability, ability to handle changing situations, is like it's a much better prediction of success in a job than whatever their Myers-Briggs score is. Right. Like you could have 20 people have the same Myers-Briggs score, and it doesn't mean that they're actually going to all perform the same way. Like, you know what I mean?
So right. Yes.
Like you could have like they could all be totally different people just because they got the same score on Myers-Briggs. Does not mean that actually predicts high quality performance or adaptability or learning or good teamwork. So there's validated scales, but I also just think it's really good to understand what the person's their goal is. Like I have employees, and it's always important to me, first off, to be very clear on what the role is, what success in that role looks like. And when people apply, to not only know that they know exactly what success looks like in that role, but I have to know why they want the job beyond money. Like what is this going to do for your future self? How is this going to actually help you get where you want to go? Because if I can know that, because I know why I want the role done, but if I can know why they want it, then it will become a win-win relationship. So it's not like I'm the employer, they're the employee, but we're actually collaborators towards shared goals. And I find that people are they're not as clear on what the role is, what it's not, and what finished looks like in that. Like just as an example, I hired someone recently to just do my emails. I offloaded one of my assistants because I didn't want her doing my emails more, and we just hired someone with one job, answer my emails. And you have to list success criteria. So it's like all emails are responded to in 24 hours. Like everyone who gets an answer feels amazing. If there's a podcast request, you send that to Connie. If there's a speaking request or any other interesting request, you send it to Whitney. Like you just define out all the success. And if someone's like, yeah, I can absolutely do that, and I want to do that, and this sounds like something that's great for me, it's just defining success, and people need that. And if you do that, you can usually clear a lot of the clutter. Most people, they just don't have a really good and organized organization, to be honest with you.
Yes. It's so hard to find the right people, and you need them to know why. You're right, to find out why they want that job. It makes all the difference, and just sticking it to somebody who's like, I don't really care. Tell us about your book that's coming out next month.
Yeah, so this book is called Personality Isn't Permanent. It destroys kind of the typical views of personality, that it's innate, that it's non-changeable, that it's something you have to discover, that it can be organized into types and categories. It just breaks down those myths and explains a very scientific way of understanding personality and why it can get stuck. For example, trauma. And how to resolve it. Your identity narrative, which is how you explain yourself. If you explain yourself the same way for several years, like, for example, I'm not a creative person, or I'm a bad communicator, or I'm an introvert, like the way you explain yourself really can predict your behavior. And so like you should probably be aware of how you describe yourself. That's called identity narrative. I talk about subconscious and about how your subconscious can, keep you stuck, but also how you can adjust it and update it. And also your environment, and about how like environment predicts personality, as does your peer group and things like that, and how you can make strategic moves to your environment to become the kind of person you want to be. So it's just a book about ultimately not letting the past be the thing that's driving your life. But that's how a lot of people are. Their past is the thing driving them. The goal is that your future is the thing driving you, and your future is the thing predicting your behavior, not the past. And if your future is the thing predicting your behavior, then you're actually going to be acting differently than you have in the past, which means that you're going to be inconsistent with the person you were before. And that's completely fine. That's called learning and growing from your former experiences and living intentionally towards a goal. And that's really how your life can have meaning and how you can go through extreme growth and create the life and circumstances you want. So that's really what the book's about. It's just that your purpose and your future self should be the thing, driving your personality.
Yeah. No, I love
And it's
that.
totally doable, by the way. Not like I'm saying it's not easy. As you mentioned very openly at the beginning, it takes courage. It takes a lot of emotional development. The more emotionally developed and flexible you get as a person, and the more confident you can become, the more options you will have as a person. The less emotionally flexible you are, the more rigid you are emotionally, the more your comfort zone will keep you trapped, and you'll be quite a consistent person throughout your future, and your options and your goals will be incredibly limited, and you'll probably define yourself very definitively, and you'll probably describe yourself based on the past.
You're so right. It absolutely can be done. It'll take work. There'll be bad days, but there'll be good days, and you just have to continue on. I absolutely believe that.
That's how you live well, though. There's no perfect practice. That's why they call it deliberate practice. It's just living daily and messing up and being okay with that, and having meaning towards your goals and being okay with the steps along the way.
Exactly.
It's really how you live and learn.
No, you're right. You're so right. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Where can people find you to get more of your words of wisdom? Because this has been so, it's so eye-opening. I love it.
Well, you're amazing. I've loved being with you, and it's been fun because right when we first started talking, obviously we knew we'd be talking about things that maybe are a little different than how most people have organized their ideas around their personality. And so, this may be a little different, but obviously it's just true, and it's also scientific. You can find more about me at benjaminhardy.com. There's tons of blog posts. If you pre-order or just order this book, depending on when you hear it, you can go and get a lot of bonus online courses. I'm giving away free online courses, taking people through this book. And also there's a journaling course, which actually like over 10,000 people have gone through that journaling course. They love it. It teaches you how to use your journal in strategic ways. But this book has about 150 journal prompts to help you reframe the past, how to design your future self, etc. And I walk you through a lot of that stuff in the course. Also, if you're someone who wants, like, just as an example, be a blogger, I give away a blogging course that I've sold for over $1,000. It was actually a live event that I did. And, that teaches how I've gotten 100 million views, how to write blog posts, how to get book proposals, how to do that stuff. So if you're someone in that realm, you can actually get all that stuff for free just for getting the book. Wow. But otherwise, there's a lot of other free material on my website, tons of blog posts. So check out benjaminhardy.com. And I would just ask if any of this resonated, please get this book. Personality Isn't Permanent. It will help you to break free from self-limiting beliefs and rewrite your story.
Oh, man. I love that. That is amazing, because I know I have a lot of people ask, well, how do you blog? How do you write? What does it entail? And I know, so this is going to be absolutely helpful for those that are listening, because, it's not that hard, but you have to have a certain mindset to do it. So you got to
learn.
Yeah. You have to be open. Gosh, thank you so much, Dr. Hardy. I've learned so much from you, and I'm going to have to hear this a few more times to just take it all in again, but it's been exciting, and congratulations on all your accomplishments. Congratulations on your 5 kids, because you adopted 3, but you had twins too.
Yeah, we adopted 3 kids, and then literally a month later, we found out my wife was pregnant with twins.
Oh.
It was a wild year, but when you're willing to move forward in your life, you put yourself through some crazy learning experiences, and you learn that you can do a lot more than you thought you could. So it's like,
so right.
Human beings are far more adaptable than we give ourselves credit for. There's a good quote actually that says the ability of the average person could be doubled if the situation demanded it. And so that's from William Durant. He's a famous historian. That's actually what this whole book is about putting yourself in situations. That's what this book is about. Willpower doesn't work. It's about putting yourself in situations that demand you to become more than you were before. But you can do it. That's what you did as a kid. As a kid, we were forced to do all sorts of stuff that was above our current capacity because life required it, or our parents required it. And then as you grow up, you stop putting yourself in such situations that demand you to grow and change. And so it's an enjoyable process. It's difficult, painful, but very satisfying. And it leads to a lot of opportunities that other people won't take because they stay safe in their comfort zone and their personality becomes permanent.
You're so right. gosh, thank you so much. I'm like, I've written a page of notes. I have learned